I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Lee Tockar. Lee has lent his voice to hundreds of well-loved animated characters in over 6,000 episodes of animation and dozens of animated movies. His award-winning credits include George of the Jungle, he was George, League of Super Evil, my favorite, My Little Pony, Johnny Test, Beast Wars, X-Men, The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man, Fantastic Four, and Dragon Booster. Lee's also a painter, illustrator, singer-songwriter, and writer of poetry, plays, and children's books. He has been a passionate supporter of the foundation through his fundraisers, and the Foundation Fighting Blindness has become his charity of choice, which really humbles us. Originally from Kelowna, he now lives in Vancouver, and today Lee will share with us his experiences in vision loss. Please welcome Lee Tockar.
Hi, everybody. First of all, by a show of hands, because this is kind of curious to me, I know that everybody here wants the lights really bright. So how many people here need bright light? By applause. Need more light. How many people are photophobic, like dim? My brothers and sisters. Yes. See, this because I'm a dark dweller. So the more light, the less I see. I'll just get to it. In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. Desiderius Erasmus, 1466, 1536. In the land of the blind, the one-eyed woman is queen. Lee Tockar, just now. Hello to you one all, my fellow shadow walkers, my kindred spirits of the dim, and travelers of worlds imagined. And hello to our friends who guide us, our doctors, researchers, fundraisers, helpers, and caregivers and volunteers, and of course to the Foundation for Fighting Blindness. You are our beloved Sherpas who lead us to the top of our highest mountains. On behalf of my blind brothers and sisters, we thank you. Before I begin, a small introduction. My name is Lee Tockar, and I am and was born legally blind, misdiagnosed with Stargardt's disease, then diagnosed with conal dystrophy, and now re-diagnosed with macular dystrophy, and awaiting a fourth in the battery of tests to find out if and how rapidly my condition will degenerate. Like many of you, unable to enjoy the luxury of driving a car, distinguishing most colors, see under certain lighting conditions, and are plagued with having to explain to friends that no, you're not a rude bastard because you didn't see them waving at you from across the road. Like many of you, I am blissfully unaware of certain dangers that loom, and let's be honest, when our loved ones and or future lovers are checking us out. So, just can't see that. So, but like you, this does not define me. This does not comprise the whole of my spirit, the breadth of my being. Like you, I am more than the sum total of my perceived abilities. Am I boring you yet? No. I'm not usually, and this you'll see by the manner of the writing that I'm quite sincere when I say I am not usually very comfortable talking about my accomplishments or myself. I prefer to simply keep doing as opposed to talking about what it is that I do. But for the sake of this exercise, I have happily accepted to speak about what I have done in my career, but I think that was the best PR presentation I've ever had, so it's a future in PR. That's wonderful. So I will reiterate some of what you all already know. So I have happily accepted to speak of what I have done in my career in the hopes that it may in some small way reinforce the potential that all of you have within yourselves, despite the world's misinformed perception of your greatness, your awesomeness, and your potential. Despite the world's expectations upon me and my apparent disabilities, I am a sculptor of stone, painter of pictures, a writer of novels, children's books, movies, plays, poetry and prose, a singer, and a strong supporter of the arts. For the last few years, I've been developing a website called FanBuilt, which promotes the arts and brings artists from around the world to collaborate together on artistic endeavors. I love artists, and those who create it. I timed this out last night. It's just under 15, 20 minutes. So it's I thought I should time it. I knew it was getting towards the end of the day for you guys, so you want to... Okay. But most notably, I've been known as a voice actor, performed in over 6,000 episodes of animation, dozens of movies on the big and small screen, and many video games. I played George of the Jungle, which is me, but a little dumber. Dr. Frog in the League of Super Evil, Bling Bling Boy, and the General in Johnny Test, and Pronto the Magnificent in Slugterra, and on and tragically on. A few years ago, I was awarded Voiceover Actor of the Year by Seth MacFarlane from Family Guy. That was like, oh my God. Yeah. Thank you. And this year, I won a Leo Award for Outstanding Performance in an Animated Series, and the following week was humbled to walk the prestigious red carpet in Los Angeles when I was nominated for my first Emmy. So that was in the same category, so Chuck went up for the blind guys. But I am not here to talk about me. You'd never know it by the way I was just talking about me, would you? Because it seems like I've just been talking nonstop about me. But as I said, I don't really like talking about myself, but perhaps it is because I have a very skewed vision and perception of how I am perceived by sighted people. Maybe I feel that if I tell people what it is that I do, it makes me think that their internal monologue must go something like, wow, those are some really great accomplishments for a blind guy. And I know that when I do this, I'm as much at fault for perpetuating that perceived prejudice as those unfortunate people who would show actual prejudice towards me. When I wrote this speech, I was confronted with a few dichotomies. As a voice actor, I'm only used to talking in front of, the number of people in the cast. And as a blind person in a sighted world, I am not used to speaking in front of other blind people, some of whom see far less than myself, and pretending that I understand their darker world. I'm not used to talking about what it is like to cope with, to live with, and sometimes cope with blindness. I cannot pretend to know how you perceive your individual worlds. That would be ridiculous. I would speak to you, though, instead not as a blind person at all, but as a human being living in the world who happens to be legally blind. This way I can comment on how all people, sighted and blind alike, all wake up in the morning and have no answers as to the why of it or the how of it. Time and time again, this world has proven how blind most people are. This is the land of the blind, and we are its kings and queens. As a side note, I'd like to say that the trunk of my speech is rooted upon the following grounds. I'm not here to talk about how when one sense is taken away, in this case vision, the other four senses make up for the lack of it. Yes, he's blind, but he can hear a whisper from across a room. Or, yes, he's blind, but he can sense these notes in a glass of wine better than a sommelier. We know that we have been granted, we know the gifts that we've been granted, which the sighted world cannot know. I'm here to talk about the other gifts which we have been granted, which is very seldom spoken of. The greatest gift, I believe, of all, our extraordinary imaginations. The worlds created within the minds of the blind. I can honestly say, with certainty, that as a writer and an artist, the greatest gift I have is my blindness. Incredible statement, perhaps, but absolutely and unquestionably true. If you will indulge me, I should like to recite the introduction to a novel which I'm trying to publish this year, called The Grim Possession of Chesterfield Couch. And as it is an introduction in and of itself, and may bear some remarkable similarities to the introduction to the speech, I shall abridge it somewhat and apologize in advance for any similarities it may. It starts with greetings. Greetings. I should like to begin with an odd and somewhat, see, I'll be more dramatic now because it's actually not me, it's me talking within a book, so I'm removed twice, so I'm not really here, actually. So, yeah, I should like to begin with an odd and somewhat personal sort of introduction. I am and was born legally blind. That is to say, I can see somewhat better than those who cannot, and far less than those who can. See, that is. I do not usually condone the listing of one's disabilities before one's personality, but as I am the author and you have set yourself as willing reader, and as the nature of my writing is, in some part, brought about by my life lived within my particular abilities, I thought it worth a mention. Why do I tell you this? Well, perhaps because of all the entrances into the theater of the mind, I personally have always preferred the ears. Without delving into the boring particulates of my particular congenital ocular affliction, how come why I no see good? Suffice it to say that my eyes did not fully develop until I was well into my 6th year, and when they were finished gestating in my head, they preferred to adopt a slightly oval shape as opposed to the conventional circular one I had so asked Santa for. That said, this posed no real problem for my younger self. I'd always and forever only known the world for what it had appeared to be. I thought that living in an uncomfortably bright, fuzzy-edged world filled with things which arbitrarily leapt out in front of me was completely commonplace. To me, a life fraught with the perils of daily near-death experiences was all quite ho-hum, thank you very ouch. Knowing no better and being an indestructible youth, I was not about to allow not seeing where I was going to keep me from running and jumping and skipping and somersaulting, which much like the other children were doing. Naturally, this led to much cutting and bruising about the face and the front of my body. To date, I have suffered 2 broken collarbones, 3 fractures, a severed tendon in my left hand, 1 chipped tooth, and an admittedly unnatural fear of inanimate objects. Through it all, aside from the knowledge I would never cruise down the main drag in a cool black lowrider, the only lasting wound I sustained was that I loved and could not easily read books. I loved hearing, and I choose that word, the stories held so dearly within their covers. Sadly, books were always written in a font which was far too small for me to read, and they should just do away with anything under 10-point font. I just get rid of it, you know. Page after tormenting page filled with a cryptic language of indiscernible blurry lines of squiggles and marks, a secret language that everyone knew but me. I was a prehistoric, living in the world of the oral tradition. All that I knew of the world I had overheard, considered, and either tossed out for sounding stupid or adopted as fact. Over time, I taught myself to memorize great passages of dialogue and recount verbatim patterns of speech and stories I would hear, dissecting the way people spoke and sounded. If a story was told and I was in the immediate vicinity, the internal recorder was on. In time, the art of listening attuned my internal intuitive voice to recite these stories in the accents of the people who told them, and I would, and still do, fill my mind with the tales I would construct to make up for those secret stories in those mysterious books I could not see well enough to read. The elusive worlds locked away within those magic, mocking little leather-bound vaults. Now I am both voice actor, proficient in the accents of the world, and writer, proficient mainly only in thinking I'm a writer. And I wish to marry these 2 skills for the purposes of sharing a story which is dear to me. And not only with you, dear sighted readers, but with my blind brothers and sisters as well. For this story was crafted in a slightly darker world, a world lived half in and half out of this world. Though blind or no, like all writers to all readers, I've grown fond of this story and the characters who walk within it, and I endeavor only to pull it humbly from myself and place it reverently within you. Afford me just one more word on that theater of the mind and its relation to the experience of the visually impaired. Unencumbered by the visual world, the theaters of the minds of the blind, particularly partially blind, are the richest waking dreamscapes of boundless possibilities. Why, I myself once fed breadcrumbs to a twitching shadow of a leaf on a hubcap in front of a sidewalk cafe for no less than 15 minutes before I realized that not only was it not a bird, but there was a growing likelihood that the girl sharing my table thought me fantastically insane. I think it was a girl. Anyway, it doesn't matter. That's not my point. My point is that walking through a world which is already only half in focus leaves the part which is not in focus open to be anything at all, anywhere at all. Can you just imagine? Well, the blind have to. Blind and partially sighted people can imagine themselves anywhere. The theaters of their minds are always filled to capacity, and the show is never boring. Occasionally, there is danger, occasionally sadness, and occasionally the show is all they have. These words are for their stage. Although it is my hope that my sighted brothers and sisters shall enjoy this play, this novel, as well as they enter their own theaters through the lavish corridors of their own perfect eyes. And that's the beginning to my novel. And it is also the thrust of my talk today, which happily does not go on for much longer. So, there you go. I wanted to talk about the benefits of being blind. And, okay, I don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm no fool. I would trade places with a sighted person like that any day. And as soon as the Foundation for Fighting Blindness can develop the research for reattaching the optic nerve, I'll pop these things out myself if I have to and go and get the thing done with the... Okay, so... But that day has not come, and so I am left to reflect upon the world I can see. More importantly, the world I can imagine. Over the last few decades, many books and lectures like The Secret have come out talking about the powers of imagination, imagining your future and actualizing it. I truly believe we blind are particular and partially sighted people are ahead of the curve a bit in this department. We must piece together our worlds through the connecting of fragments and bits of information. The sounds in our environs, the intonation of voices around us, the smells in the air moving about us. Sure, our other senses are heightened, but they all culminate in our minds, in our imaginations. It is because of my lack of vision that I have developed the kind of imagination which allows me to live partially in this world and partially in 1,000 more worlds. More lavish, more lush, more fantastical. I can only speak of my own experience here, I know, but I can honestly say that I would not trade my malfunctioning little eyeballs for the often frustrating experiences that they cause me for a depleted imagination and the inability to transport myself anywhere at all and paint or write about what I can see while I am there. So to those of you who are in my position and cannot see the world for what others tell us that it is, I would remind you to remember to embrace your abilities, to imagine a richer world, a greater world, 1,000 greater worlds. The world is only now catching on to what we already knew. The world is what we make it, what we imagine it to be, and we can imagine it to be anywhere at all. Any of us can adopt to a sighted world immediately, while a sighted person wouldn't last 2 minutes in our world. We have adapted to adversity, and overcome it. It has made us stronger, and we are stronger for it. Embrace your imagination, invent yourselves, and invent your worlds. If we wish it, we are the creators of this world. We are the destroyers of expectations. I'd like to thank the Foundation for Fighting Blindness for allowing me to talk today, and I'd thank all of you for allowing to indulge me in being honored enough to speak in front of you. Thank you very much.